everyone. My name is Jasmine Ortiz, and welcome back to the Jasmine Ortiz Show. Today I have a very incredible guest, Ryan Kairalla, and I'm really excited to talk about his history, his experience in the music industry, and just all about how he chose to go in the directions that he has so far. So welcome to the show, Ryan. Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. First of all, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. My name is Ryan Kairalla. I am an entertainment lawyer based in South Florida. I'm also an educator. I'm a podcaster. I host a program called Break the Business on SiriusXM and Volume.com, which is geared toward empowering independent creators. And I enjoy kind of wearing these different hats to support the creative community in my local area and throughout the country.
Absolutely. That's similar to how Ryan and I connected because we were talking about our experience as podcasters beyond our main role in the entertainment industry. So, Ryan, what inspired you to get into podcasting? I'm so curious. How did your role as an entertainment lawyer sort of lead you to break the business?
Well, I've always had this passion for wanting to help creative professionals, right? It's why I went into law, because I wanted to help creators through the legal side of things. And as I started in my entertainment law career, I found that there was this need for artists to learn more about how they could build an entertainment career on their own terms, being their own entrepreneurs, running their own creative businesses, and breaking free of record labels and other kind of big content companies that are going to take all the stuff that you make and not give you enough in return for it. And so about 10 years ago, I wrote a book called Break the Business, Declaring Your Independence and Achieving True Success in the Music Industry, which was all about that, how to break free of the old music model and find new opportunities for yourself as an artist entrepreneur, running your own show, being the captain of your own ship, and finding success along the way. At the time, that book was kind of controversial because 10 years ago, being an independent artist wasn't quite as tolerated as it is today, right? Now there's all kinds of tools and platforms that are out there. But back then it was still something of an iconoclast. And a lot of artists were reaching out to me wanting to know more. They read the book, they had more questions for me, and they were asking more questions than I could answer back in emails. And so I was like, I need a more efficient way to kind of continue this conversation that my book started. And so I created this podcast so I could have a weekly show where I could talk about these issues, talk about the latest news for independent creators, interview some of the biggest people in the industry and get their perspective, all back to the original central mission of informing and empowering independent creative professionals. And we've been doing it ever since. It's been a blast.
That's incredible. So it makes so much sense now connecting the dots between your book and your experience podcasting. And I was going to say, before you mentioned it was controversial, you were so ahead of the curve to have this mindset 10 years ago, especially as an independent attorney, because I feel like so many entertainment lawyers sort of want to stick to a more rigid system. I think the label system makes it a little bit more straightforward to negotiate contracts. You're dealing with their legal team. Maybe you're representing an individual artist, but when you're representing an independent artist, what are some of the major obstacles or challenges that you can run into as an entertainment lawyer?
Well, I would say the biggest obstacle is what you just identified there, which is there's this old model. And it's been around for a long time and artists know about it, right? Most of the movies that artists watch that feature some kind of singer that's making it in the industry, every one of those plots, the end of the movie, the happy ending is getting that record deal and some record executive, finding you singing in a dingy bar and rescuing you and making you a big success. And so a lot of us still have that, I had a colleague who called it the princess fantasy in their heads of that's how I'm supposed to find success. And so when I am telling artists that's not the best way anymore, you need to find success on your own terms, and you can, and there are tools to do it. You're fighting against that prevailing narrative. And so a lot of artists need to sort of be coached up to find their own independent power, to find their own independent success, and, getting them out of that princess fantasy mindset so that they can really realize their true potential as a independent entrepreneur.
Absolutely. I think that the shift in mindset from creative, who's maybe in a different headspace, not necessarily business oriented, to creative entrepreneur has been revolutionary in our industry. I think social media has played a huge role in this. The honestly, the exposure that unfair record contracts have had in the past 5 to 10 years, where people as simple as consumers are learning about what a 360 deal is. And then if the consumer's learning about it, future artists are learning about it. And they're realizing why this is inequitable. Even something as controversial, so to speak, as Taylor Swift re-recording all of her own original compositions, because, and that gets into another conversation, because a lot of listeners don't understand how she was legally able to do that. It's because she owns the composition, but she no longer owned the master sound recording. So she could recreate a new sound recording that she does own with the same composition. So all of those things getting shoved into the public's perception, I think, has made them a lot more interested in independent artists and how we wear all these different roles.
You're absolutely right about that. Again, when I wrote this book 10 years ago, all the stuff that I was saying, people were like, no, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And now, like, everybody's pretending like, they agreed with me the whole time, which is fine. I like that the industry has shifted. And I like, as you noted, that artists are more educated now. They know more about how to run their own business. They have more of a desire to do it. And they're more aware than ever of the dangers of some of those old models. And that isn't to say you can't find success with those old models. I tell this to artists, like, look, if your goal is to get like the big time record deal and to get signed to the major label and to go the Taylor Swift route, it still makes sense for you to try to achieve success on your own terms. Because the more success that you can build without a label, the better deal terms you're going to get when the label shows up, and the far less risk of you getting potentially exploited. Build as much as you can without them so that when you come to the negotiating table with you, you're on equal footing.
Absolutely. I think that's something I've had to focus on a lot as an independent artist, is building my brand, building my following, building listenership outside of the label model in order to become attractive to the label model. Because gone are the days of an A&R finding an artist in a dingy bar, like you said, and taking them and developing them into a brand and an image. Those days are completely gone. Now, labels are looking for essentially the whole package. I've spoken to label execs who have said point blank, if you do not have X amount of listeners on Spotify per month, if you do not have X amount of followers, we won't even open the email. And that's unfortunately the reality. And a lot of people don't realize, besides just those spontaneous viral moments, how incredibly expensive it is to break into the mainstream as an independent artist, because you have Spotify ads, you have YouTube ads, Google ads, TikTok, Instagram ads. You have that organic engagement that you need to receive as well. So when you're wearing all these hats, what is your main piece of advice for independent artists who feel like they're going up against this monolith, this tidal wave of influencers who can spend millions on marketing when they can't?
I think what I say to them in response, and by the way, this isn't me failing to acknowledge all of those concerns you brought up, which are legitimate ones. It's a very competitive industry right now, and it's made more competitive by the fact that the tools of creation, promotion, and distribution are more democratized than ever. Mm-hmm. So everybody's got the tools now, and it's so much more competitive, and the market's so much more saturated. So that is still a challenge. Everything that you brought up is a valid concern. But what I would say, the one thing that you have as an independent artist that maybe doesn't have the machine behind them yet, is you get to have what I still think is the most valuable asset that a creator can have. And the thing that music fans or any kind of fans of creators crave more than anything else in their artists, you still have authenticity. You're still real. And more in this era of just like everything's manufactured and, is that funny sketch that I saw on TikTok, is that like real, or did somebody just make that up? Like, people don't know, people can't like tell if something's real anymore. So like, if you can just be a real artist who's really talented and does regular live streams and is entertaining and actually talks with their fans and creates relationships with them and chats with them and builds that fan base one fan at a time, people really respond positively to that, because people still crave that authenticity in a world that seems less and less authentic with each passing day.
I think that's actually speaking to why Chappell Roan has enjoyed such rapid success.
Oh, yeah.
I started following her maybe, now it's 2025, I want to say 4 years ago. I started following her, noticing she was coming onto the independent artist scene. She had already developed several hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, social media, but her music was not taking off in any way yet. But I think her presence online and then the virality of her music and then her story, her relatability, her authenticity, all of these things that I think for a long time the label model shunned is what has made her so incredibly successful and is what made her attractive to labels now. I mean, it's similar to, I guess, what Lady Gaga experienced at the early stages of her career. She was a little too outside the box, a little too avant-garde. They wanted to fit her into a mainstream market, and what ended up attracting the most fans and devoted listeners was her being outside of that mainstream. So I think everything that you said is very pertinent to what independent artists need to focus on, their own and authentic branding and what matters to them in their artistry.
And the more that you can invest in that, the better off you are. And by the way, it took labels a long time to figure this out, to figure out that the rules have changed and that fans are craving authenticity more than ever. When the YouTube artist era started to bubble up maybe 10, 15 years ago, and you started to see artists become popular on YouTube or similar platforms like Vine, a lot of the labels that were trying to pick up those early YouTube artists and sign them to deals were still trying to promote them using the old world model. So they would grab an artist who was doing numbers on YouTube, sign them to a deal, and then the very first thing that they would do with that artist is make them disappear. They would shut down the YouTube channel. They would shut down the socials and say, we need to make you inaccessible. We need to make you something that's hard to find and coveted, because that's how we used to promote artists back in the 80s and 90s. We made them these like holy entities that you could only hope to reach but never could actually find. And then, they would disappear for 6 to 12 months. Finally, the album would come out and all the fans would go, oh yeah, I guess I kind of remember that artist from YouTube, but I've already moved on to somebody else. And then that artist's career would crash. And only recently have labels started to figure out, oh, we can't do it that way anymore. Fans still want the authenticity. They still want the access. And so it's funny, like even a lot of these artists that are signed to deals, they almost try to hide the fact that they're signed to deals now. Like they want it to look like
so
your YouTube,
true.
Make it look like your YouTube has never changed. Make it look like your TikTok has never changed. Pretend like we're not here because we're only going to hurt you as the label. You want our money, but you don't want people to think you're actually involved with us.
Yeah, actually, that is such a great point that I've seen a lot with TikTok artists, and not to devalue or undermine their own creativity and musicianship, because I would say maybe it's a 50-50 split between artists from TikTok who are genuinely talented and artists who are just influencers. I would say for the portion that's genuinely talented and built up a following somewhat organically, as far as we know, beforehand, like Benson Boone, for example, he's a great indicator of this. For such a long time, I want to say almost a year, fans were completely in the dark that he was signed to a label because the entire rhetoric, the entire story was, help me, I'm an independent artist, stream my music, or if I want to eat tonight, stream my song. And it's like, whoa. I mean, that's like another level of almost falsifying the authenticity, falsifying the relatability, because once you have the support of the label system, that almost starts to go away because they see you from the perspective of you're not this underground indie artist anymore. You have the machine working for you. And because people are so, I want to say, anti-authority right now, especially in my generation, there's a lot of pushback against being upheld by the system, so to speak.
Yeah, there's so many amazing examples of that exact phenomenon happening recently where record labels are basically trying to manufacture, almost astroturf a grassroots movement in an artist and try to make it look as not manufactured as possible. I don't know if this is a completely true story, but I've read it from a few different sources, so I feel somewhat confident in it. There was an artist who became very popular in the last few years called Gail. She had a song called ABCDEFU that really took off and was very popular on TikTok. And for a long time, people thought that song emerged because it was created organically on TikTok. As the story goes, Gail was streaming with her friends on TikTok, and one of the commenters wrote, make a breakup song using the alphabet. And she's like, oh, that's interesting. So she wrote ABCDEFU, and then it became very popular on TikTok. People loved it, and then it became a single and it became a hit. It turns out, at least according to the stories I've read, that comment that said, make a breakup song about the alphabet actually came from somebody who was an employee at Atlantic Records who had already signed Gail to a deal. And that song had already been written.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing was just they wanted to look like a manufactured TikTok organic
spontaneous
song,
moment.
but it was just the opposite. But that was a strategy, right? Because they knew that that's what makes things popular these days is people want to feel like it was organic, that it was authentic, that it was just this this spontaneous thing that happened to get created when it was just something that was manufactured because because labels know that's the stuff that's popular now.
Absolutely. I felt the exact same way when Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license went viral almost overnight. I think people failed to realize that she had the Disney machine or the Disney connections behind her from the beginning, from her High School Musical days. And beyond that, it's pretty much physically impossible for an artist to have a hit single and then have an album ready 3 months later. That doesn't happen. The album was clearly already recorded. And people were like, whoa, she just came out the gate. Crazy. She just came out with all these songs out of nowhere. And I think people really didn't stop to think, like, this was all done already. Like, the overnight success was not a mistake. They put millions of dollars in marketing behind her to make it an overnight viral success, to make it seem so impossibly organic that when she launched the album, she had a cult following. I mean, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. But I mean, it's the same level of manufacturing that now I think fans are sort of tuning into, but still not 100%.
I'm willing to forgive all that, though, because Driver's License is an absolute banger of a song. It's a great album, is too. Amazing. Oh, yeah, of course, top to bottom.
I think she's a super talented artist. Like, she absolutely deserved the success. Other artists, I disagree with that statement. But she, in particular, definitely deserved it. It was just a matter of how bamboozled I felt the public was about it.
Well, the dark side of this phenomenon where labels are leaning into trying to create some virality on TikTok as a part of releasing a song that hopefully becomes a hit is you're starting to hear stories now of artists who are signed to a label where the label says to the artist, we're not putting this song out. We're not going to put anything behind it until you can make something go viral on TikTok. Put out videos, try to get something to go viral, and then we'll build a marketing campaign around that. But any TikTok creator will tell you, virality is unpredictable. You might have like a really stupid video that gets millions of views, and then you could have a video that you put a lot of time and money and resources into that gets no views. Mm-hmm. And as an artist, it can be very frustrating where it's like, I'm stuck in this record deal. My label's not moving. I can't put any music out because they need me to make something go viral on TikTok, which I always come back to the label with, if you're waiting for something to go viral, what does the artist need you for? If the artist can make something go viral on their own, they don't need you anymore. And you're you're making them do your work for you, but you're taking, 50% of all the money.
Exactly. I think the only way that model can work is if the label's truly willing to invest marketing dollars into a production team, into pushing some of those TikToks semi-organically. Because if you're not willing to put in any money up front, like you said, the artist could be doing this 100% themselves, versus if you have the machine behind you, it needs to be working for and with you. And I agree. A lot of artists, even famous artists like Halsey, for example, posted TikToks. And again, we don't know if this is one of those falsified authenticity moments or if it's genuine rhetoric from her, but she posted something that said, the label won't let me release this song until I have a viral TikTok, so you know what to do, kind of thing. And it was just a text screen, but she's already so famous, fans were outraged, like, why can't we have new music? So it's even happening to established artists to a degree.
Well, if that story, because I've heard the Halsey story as well, and it stinks either way, right? Because if that story is real, then like I hate record labels for putting Halsey through that. And if the story is a media creation, then I hate record labels for putting fans through that. Either way, that's really annoying and manipulative marketing that as a music fan makes me really unhappy, and as a artist side entertainment lawyer makes me furious.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it angers me as well as an independent artist, because it feels like in social media in general, just as a person, you can hardly trust anything put in front of you. And then when you're supposedly interacting with your favorite artist, you want to have a certain degree of trust there, right? And I think people have developed these intense parasocial relationships with their artists, their favorite artists, through social media. So then when an artist kind of comes out and tricks them on purpose, it breaks that trust. Even if the parasocial relationship was taken to an extreme level by the fan, the artist needs to recognize that it's there and that it needs to be curated in a way that isn't going to hurt their fans or their image.
Question.
So I want to get back to you, Ryan. I love the conversation we're having. It's fantastic. But who in your life inspires you the most to keep going? What has gotten you to this point in your career?
Oh my gosh. I mean, to me, it's the artists, it's the clients that I get to represent. They are a never-ending source of innovation, brilliance, both creative brilliance and business brilliance. And the fact that I get to wake up every morning and think about how can I help these people reach more fans? How can I help these people achieve more success? How can I help these people become a little more financially secure? Is so fulfilling for me. I mean, that's how I got into this from the beginning. I was always kind of an artsy kid in school. I was in like the school rock band. I did all the school plays and things like that. I was always hanging around with the artsy kids and, developed quite an affinity for them, quite an appreciation for them. And I realized pretty early on, I would never have the creative chops to find success in the entertainment industry on the artist side of things, but realized that I was pretty interested in the business side of things and had, and I was good at explaining things to artists. I was good at learning the business side of the industry and realized I could be helpful to this community that I really care about. And it's what's made me want to continue practicing law and helping these people, to keep doing the radio show every week, which I do completely for free. It's a complete public service. It's I lose money on it because it takes, as you know, as a podcaster, it takes a lot of money to light up rooms and to buy the equipment and all that stuff. But I do it as a public service because I care about artists and I want to see them learn and succeed and thrive. And I just feel honored that I get to do that.
That's fantastic. I really got that feeling from you when you were even saying that you wrote this book 10 years ago, because again, you were so ahead of the curve and really looking out for the people who need someone like you in their corner the most, independent artists. What do you feel through all of this is your greatest skill set? Do you feel that communicating with the artists between negotiating their needs and wants and negotiating with labels or managers, what are some of your greatest skill set?
Oh my gosh, that's...
Sorry, I'm asking the important questions.
Well, but compliment yourself as hard as you can is what I heard. I mean, I think at least what I try to do, and you can, reasonable minds can disagree about how well I do at this, but what I try to do in my work is to be somebody who supports my clients as much emotionally as I do in terms of like the legal advice, right? I want my clients to see me as somebody that they can trust, somebody that's there for them. I'm a teacher as well. I've taught at the college level. I teach high school students. I've worked in K-12 and higher education for as long as I've worked in entertainment. And so I often have a teacher's heart and teacher's mindset when I get into the industry. And so when I work with a client, I don't just want to help them on the legal stuff. I want to help them be more informed. I want them to walk out of the transaction more knowledgeable and more confident in their abilities as a creative professional and as a business professional. And that means more, or at least means as much to me as handling whatever their immediate legal problem is. And so I work very hard on that side of things to try to be a trusted confidant for my clients as much as a trusted attorney.
So you see yourself in a mentorship role, an educator role, as well as giving legal advice, correct?
Well, if you're a teacher, you never take your teacher hat.
Yeah.
It's always with you. And yeah, so I mean, a lot of my artist clients are much older than I am, so it would be obnoxious for me to say, oh, I'm your mentor. I learn just as much from a lot of my artist clients as they learn from me. But I do think a lot of what I do is mentoring, whether it's, mentoring on the radio or getting to work one-on-one with my legal clients and give them not just legal advice, but career advice and personal advice, whatever I can. Yeah.
I think that relationship is so important because a lot of entertainment attorneys sort of have this black and white, just on paper relationship with their clients. And I understand, of course, it's a business. Of course, you're practicing law. So there can be a degree of formality. But I think the entertainment industry and entertainment law in specific is so different than other forms of law practice because what you're negotiating is someone's brand, someone's personhood, someone's intimate art. And I think that's so different than M&A, for example, or, contract law. Even though it involves contracts, it's contracts kind of tying someone's life to a company or tying their livelihood, their art to a publishing deal or to a manager, and really making sure you're looking out for them and that they're not getting exploited.
Well, that's an excellent point. And it's that what you just spoke about there is a responsibility that I don't take lightly. It is not lost on me that when you represent artists, you are helping take care of the most important thing in the world to them. For creative professionals, there is nothing more important than that piece of art that they've either created or that they're in the process of creating. Their soul is in that MP3 file, or it is in that book that they wrote, or that blog that they posted, or that work that they painted. And I find it to be a very important responsibility for me to do the very best that I can for that client to, so that they know that the thing that they've created that's so damn important to them is in good hands. And, and because I care about these artists so much, and I've always have, I like to think that I treat their work with the love and respect that they do.
Absolutely. I think that's an incredibly admirable trait because, like I said, a lot of people see it as a cutthroat business, which it is, but artists do need some level of protection from all of those external forces that can come in and take advantage of them. So speaking of external forces taking advantage of them, what is your take on Spotify and the DSP situation, and just the fact that it feels sort of like artists don't have a true marketplace anymore because no one's buying music on Apple Music and everyone's just streaming or using digital services. So where do you feel the monetization from artists needs to go?
Gosh, you want to talk about shifts in the industry since when I wrote my book to today. When I wrote my book in 2015, I think the word Spotify appeared in there once as like hey, this thing is coming, we should keep an eye on it for I said that in like 2 sentences, right? And then the rest of my book was talking about buying CDs at Walmart and MP3s and things like that. And now nobody buys CDs and MP3s anymore. And it's all streaming. It's all DSPs. It's all Spotify. And the biggest shift has been that in 2025, recorded music has gone from being the product to a loss leader, a commercial, an advertisement for that artist.
And their brand.
Yeah, their brand, to hopefully funnel and drive music fans to the things that actually do make money for artists, like live performances, merchandising, licensing opportunities, and the like. And it's a bummer for me, and I can see why artists get frustrated with it. You want to be able to just sell your record the way you used to, and you sell a CD on Bandcamp, you're making $6, $7, $8 on that. And when you think about how many Spotify streams it takes to get to $6, $7, $8, it's
incredible.
Very, very frustrating for artists. And, I think the less important question of does this suck for artists? We need to put that aside because it is what it is, right? It's the real question is, what do you do about it? How do you make the shift? And I think it gets back to what we said before. More than ever, you have to lean into your authenticity because you need to start building relationships with fans that are a lot deeper and a lot more passionate, because it's only the deep, passionate fans that are going to come see you in concert. It's only the deep, passionate fans who are going to buy your merchandise, who are going to love your music so much that they spread it on social media so that you might be able to catch the attention of a music supervisor and get you a sync licensing opportunity. It's not a volume business anymore, unless you're a Taylor Swift or an Ed Sheeran or an Olivia Rodrigo. It's engage the fans one at a time, build quality fan relationships over quantity more than ever. And so leaning into that authentic stuff, building your fan relationships one at a time, and finding ways to create those super fans that are willing to spend $100 a year on you, or even $1,000 a year on you or more, in the form of merchandise, live performances, Patreon style subscription services for people to come to your live streams. That's the new path. And, I'm not going to say it's better, or I'm not going to say it's worse than what it was 20 years ago. It just is. And we have to figure out the best way to move forward as creative professionals.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. Just finding new avenues of monetization. So I've interviewed a lot of independent artists just kind of starting out in the first few years of their career on the show and on other shows. And I think one of the common denominators that I've started noticing is this heavy thread of entrepreneurship beyond just marketing yourself as an artist, really already jumping into branding and merchandising or collaborating with an existing brand, collaborating with other creatives. And I think that shift, while it can feel overwhelming because we're already wearing so many different hats, I think it is somewhat empowering as well, because you're able to develop this branding that goes so far beyond your artistry persona that even if you want to one day not perform anymore or not make music anymore, like Rihanna, for example, you can still develop this brand empire that you can diversify your monetization into several different industries. So I think that has become so much more common of a practice. And of course, 10, 15 years ago, Jessica Alba, Mariah Carey, J-Lo, they were all doing brand deals or creating perfumes or sometimes clothing or makeup lines, but it was not seen as integral to who they were as an artist, versus now, I think that is just one and the same, and it has to be.
Absolutely. I think we shouldn't necessarily see that as a failure either. I think a lot of, in the old days, it used to be that if you were the kind of artist who sold products in a commercial, like that was almost a knock on you. Like, oh, look at you schlocking products. I thought it was about the art. Look at you selling out.
Now there's no choice.
Yeah. Well, not only now is there no choice, but the artists who are doing that and they are doing that well are making way more money in that than they ever made in their creative product, right? Rihanna's making way more as a non-musician right now than as a musician. Jessica Alba is another great example of this, or Gwyneth Paltrow, or any of those people who realize that nothing makes money better than money. And investing in businesses. There was a great book came out a few years ago called A-List Angels, and I can't remember. I think it was Zach Greenberg who wrote it. He was on my podcast a few years ago. He wrote all about this. I highly recommend this book because it was talking about how some of the biggest names in music have made their fortunes not through their labor, not through making music or playing live, but by investing in ventures, right? Lending their name, their likeness, their brand to getting ventures off the ground. And so you have artists like 50 Cent, who's made far more in vitamin water than he ever made from his, in the club royalties. And I don't, and we shouldn't discourage that from artists, right? That's not a bad thing. That's not selling out. That is the reward for a lifetime of savvy brand investment as an artist. And, that's the kind of, those are the kind of things that, we want more and more artists to do. Pitbull is another great example of this. You were talking about, folks here in Miami and, 305 and all that, right? He's made plenty of money as an amazing pop star, but he's also done a wide range of very effective, very valuable business ventures that has made him the real success that he is, both in and out of music. And we want to see more stuff like that in artists, because artists have so much value that they can bring to the table in any startup scenario, and they should be getting what they deserve from those deals.
Absolutely. And I think Pitbull's a great example too, because he's someone who gives back to the local community. Instead of solely profiting from it, he has several nonprofit initiatives, education initiatives. I think he's a great example of what you can use your brand for, both to monetize it, but also to give back.
He is the best example of that,
that
I know of. When I think of what this guy has done, for the country and for the world, but Mr. Worldwide, but just what he's done here in our local community, right? As you noted, founding a charter school, starting a wide range of charities, the hurricane relief work he's done, the pandemic relief work that he's done. He's used his name, his likeness, his brand, his music to create a lot of financial success for himself. But his real story is what he has used of that success to empower others, to lift up others, to help his community. And we don't even know about a lot of the stuff that he's done, because a lot of things that he does for his community, he does not advertise. But the stuff that we do know about is really
already
quite
incredible.
Inspiring.
He even came to speak while I was a senior at UMiami. He came to speak to us, and he had so much pride and joy, I could tell, just from being in a space that means already so much to his community and being able to give back just with his own panel and advice and just his presence. And he was so humble and so knowledgeable just about everything that he's done throughout his life and career. So I have a lot of respect and admiration for him.
Right back at you, for sure.
So I want to ask you a couple more questions before we wrap up.
I'm here.
What has been one of the greatest challenges that you've had to overcome to get to this point in your career?
My gosh. How familiar are we all with the concept of imposter syndrome?
Very familiar.
I would assume an artist like you, that is, something that you probably frequently encounter, as most artists do. Well, lawyers feel that way too, especially when you are a lawyer who's not even 40 yet and, came out of law school and did not work at a law firm when he started. And, didn't have, when he started serving artist clients, didn't have like any experience, right? I had to learn all of this stuff by doing. I had to learn it on the fly. I had to build a plane as I fly it. I had to build a legal practice as I flew it. And, I've been very grateful to have a wide range of mentors, both inside and outside of the entertainment industry, who have helped me along the way. But in terms of like running a law firm, like I've built a lot of this with my own name on it. And when I walked into rooms, especially when I was early in my career, and the other lawyer at, the record label lawyer on the opposite side of the table, was more than twice my age sometimes, and had been practicing law maybe even longer than I had been alive at that point. Were lawyers that I looked up to. And, I would read their books. I'd read their law review articles and things like that. It was easy for me at the time to think like, oh, I don't belong here. I need to run far, far away from this. And one of the things that I think I had to realize, and as I've gotten older, I have come to realize this, is that everybody has imposter syndrome. Even the lawyer on the other side of the table who's been doing this for 30 years, they're still afraid that they can't quite hack it. And once I kind of realized we're all sort of faking it a little bit, it's sort of given me permission to figure it out. And I once heard somebody tell me, and it's advice that I give to my students at the University of Miami and at Doral College when I teach there. Somebody once told me, if you wait until you're 80%, or sorry, I always get this advice wrong. If you wait until you're 100% ready to take advantage of an opportunity, you will lose that opportunity to somebody who is 80% ready and is willing to learn the rest on the job. Those big opportunities, they don't come along every day. And sometimes when they come along, it's not going to be at a time where you're 100% ready for it. But if you see that opportunity and it excites you and you think, this is what I want, but you're not 100% ready, if you're 80% ready, say yes and have the confidence in yourself that you're going to figure out the rest as you go. Because so many of the greatest achievements in this world, both inside and outside of the entertainment industry and in all forms of business and just all forms of human endeavor, have often been started by somebody who was 80% ready and figured out the rest on the job. And once you realize that we're all just sort of faking it a little bit, we're all kind of building the plane as we fly it. If you acknowledge that and you're willing to work hard and catch up, that's how you're going to take advantage of the most opportunities that you can. And I'm glad that's something that I've convinced myself of in my own life so that I could do the things that I get to do today.
I think that is probably some of the best advice that I've heard from someone in your position, speaking to people who are just starting out, whether they're creatives or aspiring lawyers or podcasters. I mean, when I started this show a year ago, I had zero podcasting experience. I just knew that I could form a coherent sentence. I could speak to people.
Well, that already puts you ahead of most podcasters. So you're already in like the top 1%. If you came to the table already being coherent, I didn't get there till like my 4th year podcasting. My God.
I did some like intensive one-on-one interview role playing with my mentor who helped me start this show. And then after like 4 sessions, he was like, okay, you're off to the races. Just do it. And I was like, I have literally no idea where to start. I didn't even listen to podcasts, I'm embarrassed to say. Now I've gotten into them. Now I'm into the whole world of it, but I had never even listened to a podcast. So now I'm here like, okay, I've always been the recipient of interviews as an artist. I've gone on many shows. I know how the media junket works, but I want something that's authentic and has my voice and expresses addresses the issues that I've always been so passionate about discussing, but I never had a platform to do so. And it ignited this passion in me to talk about things, like you said, that advocate for independent artists, that advocate for young entrepreneurs, that inspire people at the beginning of their careers, because I experience imposter syndrome almost every single day. Justin Bieber experiences imposter syndrome. I mean, he's been posting on Instagram saying he feels he's unqualified every time he walks into a room. And that's a multi-Grammy award-winning artist who's sold out stadiums across the globe. I mean, if he feels it, how are we not feeling it? And I think so much of success is faking it until you make it. Obviously, backing that up with substance and doing the work and not just coasting by. But you have to get your foot in the door somehow, and you're not going to be the most qualified person in every room every time. You have to make yourself stand out in other ways.
Absolutely. And the sooner you figure it out, the sooner that a world of opportunities awaits you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Ryan. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything else you would like to leave my audience with? Any way to find you or learn more about you?
Absolutely. Well, if you are listening to this program, then you're already getting a lot of great information on how to achieve success in the entertainment industry, and you're in very good hands with Jasmine. But if you have a little bit of extra time and you're looking for maybe another program to check out, you can go to, it's called Break the Business. That's the program I host on SiriusXM 145 on Mondays. You can also check it out on volume.com and all major podcast platforms. It's a weekly program. We're going to have Jasmine on the show very, very soon. And so I can think of no better reason for you to start watching the show than that. Beyond that, you can check out my law firm's website, rkpalaw.com. You can email me at ryan@rkpalaw.com. You shoot me an email, you write me, I'll write you back. I don't have that much going on other than just, a pile of legal work and a screaming 2-year-old. But if you email me, I'll find time to reach out back to you because I love getting to meet more people in this industry.
Amazing. Thank you again for your time, Ryan. Once again, that was the Jasmine Ortiz Show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.